Welcome back to another edition of the Bold American Podcast presented by Barstool Sports. Today is Tuesday, April 15th, and yes, I sound like crap. I can't understand. I went from basically never really getting sick to I've now had this throat thing going for what feels like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's not like I've been raging and partying and I lost my voice because of that. It's just I don't know what it is, but so I apologize in advance for sounding like this. We got a great show, lots to talk about. Later in the show, we are going to be joined by Chad Mumm, and some of you might know that. Some golf fans might know that name. He is the executive producer of Full Swing on Netflix, but Chad is also a military brat who grew up playing on military golf courses all over the world. And we're going to chat all about that, about the Masters, about Full Swing on Netflix. But before we get to that, School Circle on me, last 72. Ryan, how we doing?
So I don't want to talk about my last 72, Connor.
Well, I don't either, but we have to. Let's go.
So I went up to that other school up in New York. It was cold. It was rainy. It was dreary. It was exactly what I expected. Went up to watch the women's Army-Navy lacrosse game. Results were not what we wanted. Listen, your school's beautiful, but it's like it's nothing compared to Annapolis in terms of Annapolis is just light years ahead of just
in what way?
There's nothing. I stopped at a rest stop and got a Diet Coke. I mean, there's nothing around. Nothing.
No, it is. I mean, here's the problem with West Point is, that place was built so long ago and they haven't really built any, modern cities around it. There's some cities, 15, 20 minutes away. And obviously New York is down the Hudson. But it really is, when you think about military posts, it's strategically located, right? It's right there on that West Point of the Hudson. So it was put there for a reason. I can't help that there's no cities. As far as the campus goes, I think it's gorgeous.
I mean, campus is beautiful. Again, it was 32 degrees in April up there. So, yeah. But I will say the hospitality from West Point was second to none. Got to meet your new athletic director. He was incredible. Sat me up in the soups box. So I walked in all my Navy gear, and literally you could have heard a record drop, like the record stopped spinning. Everybody looked at me. And I was just like, I swear I'm supposed to be here. In fact, I was inside watching. So the men's game was happening at the same time in Annapolis. That went into overtime. Navy lost in overtime. Bummer. But I'm standing there and a woman comes up to me and she says, "Excuse me, can I see your wristband?" And Theo, the athletic director, said, "Hey, don't pick on her. She's where she's supposed to be." But yeah, people were definitely had their eyes on me. But, listen, one of the and we always say it, and Connor, you and I have talked about this so much, but there's no bigger rivalry than Army Navy, and no matter what sport it is, it's a big deal. But there is no other rivalry that has so much shared love between the two teams. And I really felt that. And, it's always just, to watch my daughter out there in her first Army Navy lacrosse game and being a part of the team for that. It was pretty awesome. So, and we're going to be seeing Army again. My daughter just texted me May 1st in the playoffs. So at Loyola. So rematch.
Oh, they already know the matchup for the Patriot League tourney. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So she texted me that this morning. So that was that was the big thing of my weekend. And then, yesterday watching the Masters, my 10-year-old son bet on McIlroy. And so he was a happy little camper at the end of the night. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that weather, it doesn't even matter that it's April. It can be brutal up there on a random day. So the fact that it was 30 and snowing, not surprising, but also I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, my dad was down at the men's game in Annapolis. He's like, "Oh, it's 50 degrees here, low wind, it's beautiful." And I'm like, "Great." Not up at West Point. So, yeah.
No, yeah.
But it was cool to be up there.
Yeah. And shout to Theo. I think Theo does an excellent job of understanding that so much about being an athletic director, and I've never been an athletic director, so I'm just going off what I know from having conversations with people and observing, but it's so much about just relationships. And although you ultimately represent another school, that doesn't mean that we can't be nice to you when you are our guests. So I think he does a great job of that. But yeah, that game, I mean, it was never close, really, right? I mean, Army, I was watching the men's game and keeping an eye on the women's game. It was like Army jumped out like 7-1, I think, at one point, right?
Yeah, it was really tough. I don't think Navy's been down. I mean, the rankings came out today, still ranked 22nd in the nation, but it was a tough loss. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the men's game. The men's game, my goodness. I mean, even if you're just not an Army or Navy fan, that was just an exciting game, exciting sports to watch. Army was down. Our Army was up 3 or 4 at one point. Navy comes back, scores 4 unanswered, goes up 1, then goes up 2. Army scores 2 to tie it up right before the end of the game, went to overtime, and then Army won in overtime. Just a really exciting game. And I never played lacrosse, as I've mentioned before, but my stomach was in knots watching that game and just speaking to the rivalry in general. It's just it doesn't matter the sport. It really just matters no matter what. So exciting weekend for Army men's and women's lacrosse. Speaking of last 72, I'll get it out of the way. I lost that foot race to White Sox Dave, and I'm here to admit something. Some reflection over the weekend. I realized, like, wait a second, I haven't run a competitive foot race since I was 26. So in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, I'll be able to do, what I've always been able to do. And I don't run as much as I did when I was 26, but I still run. Bottom line is I had myself convinced in my head that I was going to do a certain thing. And then I realized, oh man, I'm 40. And that's really what happened. And it didn't help, certainly, that I had some drinks with some mini golf teammates the night before. So I was definitely dehydrated and just overall.
What was the race? Like, what was the length?
Just a mile.
It was a mile.
A mile sprint is a hard race. I mean, even when I was in amazing shape, that's a hard race, sprinting for a mile. So disappointing. Showing credit to him for running very well. He trains basically, not trains, but he runs every day. So he was certainly in better shape, and he beat me. And I just didn't think it was going to go that poorly for me.
How much did he beat you by?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. I'll just say a lot. It was embarrassing how much he beat me by. So, but I came to the realization talking to my wife. She's like, dude, like, you're 40. People get older.
No. How old is White Sox Dave?
36.
Okay. Come on. I mean, okay. So here's what I want to happen. I don't want the clip to be that you're saying you're blaming it on your age and you haven't.
No, I'm not blaming it on anything.
Okay.
I'm blaming it on the fact that I didn't train at all. And I thought I could do something at 40 that I used to be able to do at 26. And I simply cannot. And saying that out loud and coming to that realization is tough for me as a competitor, an athlete. Like, you don't want to ever admit that you don't have it anymore. But even the greats have to hang it up at some point.
You were like, that was like your Mike Tyson Logan Paul fight.
I gotta jump in, Cons. I gotta jump in. First of all, Nick Triney called the pulled hammy. He called that as you guys were running. So can you address the hammy allegations? Because they said you were
my legs gave out in the second lap completely.
They said you were light jogging around the facility during mini golf. They're like, oh, how's Con's light jogging over here? He's got a pulled hammy. So that was tough though. When Nick Trainey's like, oh, he's gonna call out a pulled hammy, and then you did that right away. So it was just that the pulled hammy allegations were tough. That was a tough look. I was rooting for you. You're my boy. I was like, damn, it's hard to see my boy go down like that, especially the White Sox Dave, who just is the worst guy to lose to. So I feel your pain.
No, I would like to I mean, I run, but just not the way I used to. So I'm actually kind of curious now to get back into it more consistently, more seriously, and just to get back to what I maybe could have been. Because the other thing was 2 weeks ago out of nowhere, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to have to do this when I go to Chicago. Let me run a mile and see where I'm at. And I ran a 6:50. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like if I do that, even if he's been doing a lot of running and he can run a 6:30, I don't know, I'll figure it out and find a gear. Let's say I went out and all conditions were perfect. I wasn't dehydrated. I think, I don't know, like even if I was able to run a 6:50, it might still not have been enough because again, in my head, I was thinking, all right, I'll just dial it up and beat him in like the last lap. And what I'm coming to realize is I don't know that I have that gear anymore. It's tough to admit, but it might be the case. So I don't know. Tough to lose that, but came back. I won my match in the mini golf in dramatic fashion. That was very, very nerve-wracking. Everybody watching. I missed a very short putt to end it earlier. Went to double overtime. Won that. That was a lot of fun, though, to do that mini golf. And you talk about competition. Like, I hadn't felt butterflies in competition like that in a long time. So it was a lot of fun to win the mini golf, certainly, and beat that other team. And had a lot of fun. Ryan, were you able to see any of the highlights from the mini golf?
I was watching some of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Watch some of the highlights. I was looking for the race footage. I guess there was not race footage.
I'm hoping that just gets buried, burned,
yeah,
never seen from again.
So. You know, and we were obviously texting, and you know, we were it was like your win was going to be a win for all of us. And
yes, I know.
So
I let you guys down.
I mean, yeah, so I would like to hopefully get involved in some of these athletic competitions at Barstool because I feel like I could represent our team pretty well.
All right, well, I feel like I redeemed myself by sinking essentially a $60,000 putt later that evening.
So. I missed that part.
All right, well, we won $60,000, so that was nice. All right. Let's get in some other things going on around the world. Katy Perry, of all people, went into space. So as part of a space mission that lasted 11 minutes alongside, looking right now. Sorry.
Gail King.
Gail King. That's the name I was looking for. Yeah. Gail King from Good Morning America. And Lauren Sanchez, who is, of course, Jeff Bezos' Beyonce. They went up in space for 11 minutes and came down. What do you think about these people, these ultra wealthy and ultra famous people going up into space? And they mask it as research and Blue Origin exists to eventually maybe break down the barriers to make space flight more attainable for everybody, to get it eventually to a place where it's similar to eventually get space flight to where it's like just a normal airplane flight. So I was just curious what you thought about all these people going up into space, Ryan.
I mean, I think it's cool, right? If I got the opportunity, I'd do it. You know, rich people get to do rich people things. So I'm not going to knock them for doing that. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think Katy Perry got out and kissed the earth, making it sound like she was stranded in space for days.
Oh, is that what happened? And she was there for 11 minutes. I mean, that's 11 minutes. Dramatic. That's a little dramatic, but
don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking space flight and going up beyond the Earth's atmosphere, albeit for 11 minutes, or I guess the whole thing took 11 minutes. So they weren't up beyond the atmosphere for that long, but very cool. But I don't know. We don't need to act and coronate them like they're Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong.
And I'm most certainly not doing that. Yeah. But, I mean, hey, if you're friends with Jeff Bezos' fiance and you get and she asked me, hey, you want to go up to space for 11 minutes? I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So. Yeah. First all female space flight since 1963, which I thought was an interesting little tidbit that we've never had another all female space flight. So I guess, shout to women going.
I mean, would have been cool if they put a couple teachers, a nurse,
Speaking of, do you remember when the Challenger blew up?
I watched that in class. I was sitting
right.
in class. Yeah.
Like, didn't they make that? That was like a, hey, let's pull the TV in type thing.
Yeah. They pulled it in on the, on the rolling cart. And yeah, our whole school was watching it. And that was terrible. I mean, I still replay that sometimes. And, you've got the parents are on the bleachers and, heartbreaking.
Yeah. I'm not trying to age you there, but I could imagine you were watching that in school. Well, you were probably in like real early school. You're probably like kindergarten, right?
I was in preschool.
There you go. You were in preschool. Okay.
That's fucked up. You just age shamed me.
All right, I did. I'm sorry. It's not like I'm that far behind you. It's okay. Ryan, do you have a real ID?
Do you know, it's so funny because I saw this on the list, and tomorrow on my calendar, my assistant put on 8:30 DMV real ID. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to the DMV at 8:30 to get my real ID. So I do not currently have one, but and there's no real ID center, but like there's only some, like my DMV, I go there, they do it all, but it's still going to take like 3 weeks before I get it. And the real ID, I think it kicks in like in early May.
May 7th. Yeah, you can't get on. So
you can use your passport.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess that'll force people to fly with a passport even on domestic flights.
Yeah.
And the public is, I guess, as the public is wont to do, like complaining about government overreach, because essentially it's just confirming a little bit more that you are who you say you are, and they're harder to counterfeit, as I understand them. So I don't see it as a big deal. My big thing is though, like post 9/11, travel in an airplane has seemingly got at some points unnecessarily difficult and a pain. Whereas like I travel a lot on train too, and there's no security. You can walk onto a train
with anything
and no one checks anything. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I first of all, like the backlash about the real ID, this real ID was pre-COVID. We were coming out with real IDs. It just got extended because of COVID. So this is something that's been in the works for a long, long time. I don't know. I'm knocking on wood here, but I don't really have trouble with travel. I've got TSA pre-check. I never check a bag. So I can roll into an airport like 30 minutes prior, and for the most part, I'm fine,
Yeah. Also, like, I'm not trying to make this more difficult for you and I, because I have TSA pre-check as well. And the TSA pre-check line always flies. But I guess my question is like, why can't we make TSA pre-check kind of like the standard, right? Like where you don't need to have TSA pre-check and pay for this additional level of security. Why can't that just be the standard for everybody across the board and just make it easier to get in and out? Because I can remember pre 9/11. I mean, you didn't even need a plane ticket. You could go through security. Because I remember the first time I got on a flight, it was without my parents, and my dad took me all the way to the gate, and he wasn't going with me. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't even remember what it was like pre 9/11, honestly. So
yeah. I don't know. I just
I prefer the security when I get on a flying tube in the sky. I'd like to know that I'm the safest I can be. So
yeah, but why do you feel that same way when you get on an Amtrak?
I mean, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't, because I'm not 35,000 feet in the air. So
I'm not trying to push back, but like, what does it matter if you're 35,000 feet on the air or on the ground? Like if the train car blows up, what difference does it make? I don't know. It just seems a little ridiculous to me that we haven't figured out an easier way to travel. But anyway, did you see recently this weekend, Bernie Sanders was at Coachella?
So I didn't actually see that, but I looked it up when you said, and he introduced, is it Clairo? I don't know, the artist. I looked her up. I guess she's got quite a following. So, but I don't know any of her music, but, that whole thing, it's like you got Bernie Sanders getting the young people going and introducing like a young, like female artist. And it's just such an oxymoron. It's like, come on, you know,
I just think like, I don't know how everyone sees through it. Right. And I appreciate he's trying to appeal to a younger audience. I just don't see how that would work going on stage at Coachella. Thinking
well,
like,
first of all, I guarantee that 95% of the people in that audience had no idea who he was. No idea. Like, no idea. They're like, who is this old guy here? They probably thought it was like part of the act, you know? It made no sense.
And I think like what we've seen with this past election is the Democratic Party is now trying to figure out ways to appeal to the younger audience, whether that's podcasts, appearing at Coachella. I just can't imagine that somebody on Bernie Sanders' team didn't raise their hand and say like, hey, this kind of feels like fake and disingenuous, and I think everyone's going to see right through this. Now, he was in town doing a rally with AOC, so it wasn't like he went out there just for this. It was kind of like an add-on, but I just think it seems so transparent, and this is not the route that politicians should be taking. I don't know. I just think I'm all for politicians appealing to a younger audience, but this isn't the way. And I just, it's so, there's not a single person on your team that says like, this is going to look silly. Maybe we do something else.
Well, I think that we have to, on both sides, like they just don't get it. They don't get what they need to do to like inspire the younger crowd. Listen, well, I know we're going to get to it later in the show, but you got that happening, and then you got Trump at the UFC fight.
Yes.
Saturday night.
Yeah, we talk about that right now.
Yeah, which was
Trump,
like,
I mean, I get it because very clearly he walks in the building and gets a major pop. Clearly, like that is his demographic that supports him, regardless of what he does. So I understand that. And I don't want to even say like he shouldn't be doing that. I understand that you, as a politician, you want to be among your constituents, among people. But it's just no matter what they do.
Did that bother you that he was there? You don't like?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. I have no problem with presidents attending major sporting events.
I think I like when presidents go to like sporting events. I think it's, it's like, it's American. I like it. But he wasn't by himself. I saw Tulsi Gabbard was there, Marco Rubio, RFK. Cheryl Hines got the snub, the handshake snub. And I was watching that. I was watching that live. And he walked by and you just see her. She has her hand out. And then he walks by and she looks at RFK and she goes like, okay, like that. And I was like, was that intentional? And then the next thing you know, it was all over the place. So
of course, and everyone's going to make something of that, whether it was intentional or not. I have a hard time believing he would. Well, no, that's not that hard to believe he would intentionally snub someone because he absolutely would do that. But then he went back and shook her hand after the fact. So that
I missed. I was wondering. I missed that he actually went back over. So
yeah. So either somebody on his team told me like, "Hey, sir, you missed Cheryl Hines because he didn't see her," or he missed it and somebody like got in his ear like, "Hey, maybe you should go back and shake RFK's wife's hand." It's still funny to me though that that RFK Jr. is married to Cheryl Hines, given her work on Curb Your Enthusiasm and how so many of these incidents almost seem like they could be an episode of Curb.
Yeah, totally. That was an episode of Curb. That was actually 100% could have been. And I saw Dave was posting that he got Trump to laugh hysterically. So he was flexing on that. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, I would. I would. Because that's one of the hardest things to do, right? If you've ever been in a receiving line, outside of just shaking someone's hand, you want to try to say something to get a reaction out of the person and maybe be quasi memorable. And you have such a small window to do it. So the fact that, credit to Dave, whether he said it off the cuff or he knew like, all right, I'm going to say this when he comes by me. Either way, for him to get a reaction out of President Trump like that, I thought was pretty good. He mentioned the legislation, which I'm all for. He mentioned the legislation about water pressure. I didn't realize that was federally mandated, whether the water pressure could be at a certain rate in hotels and in people's homes.
So that's what he said to him?
Okay, yes, he mentioned the water pressure executive order because that's the sort of thing we all care about, right? Is water pressure. Sticking in politics, also though, that something that was not as great in your state there in Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro had an arson attack at the governor's residence, which is in Harrisburg. Side note: my wife is from Camp Hill, which is right next to Harrisburg.
Okay.
Anyway, the attack happened at 2 a.m. And it's been highlighted not only because it was a violent attack, but because it was during Passover.
Yeah.
It raised concerns that this was not only politically motivated, but potentially an anti-Semitic.
Well, the guy jumped the fence and then literally, first of all, I have some questions on how this person was able to jump the fence and get into the house. Both of those things happen. And really, I mean, if you see the pictures, I mean, major damage to the governor's mansion. Thank God they got out. There was another family that was staying with them, celebrating Passover with them. They all got out, but that's terrible. I mean, terrible. And I'm a big fan of Josh Shapiro. I think he's a great governor. And I mean, even if I didn't think he was a great governor, I don't want you burning down the governor's mansion, but it was, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago about Tesla.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Whether you agree with someone's politics or not, why would you try to physically harm them? And in this case, his family or whatever guests he had over the house, like that's never the answer. To try to burn someone's house down. So that's just absolutely horrible. And hopefully, the individual that they arrested gets brought.
He was
to justice.
caught. He's got a long rap sheet too. I saw. So
all right. Another thing I saw that I found to be interesting. So right now, amid all the tariff talk and the talks with China, there are some folks on TikTok in China who are exposing that luxury brands that market themselves as European brands and made in Europe are being exposed as being manufactured in China, which I didn't know, but also doesn't surprise me. So my question to you, Ryan, is how do you feel about just luxury goods in general? And do you care if they're made in Europe or in China?
So I like some luxury goods. I'm not like a label whore. I think is what you call it. I don't, but listen, when I was in Paris last year, I bought a beautiful Goyard bag at the flagship store there, and it was a whole experience, and and I loved it. I have some designer bags. And I to know that if they were made in China, I would have a problem with that, because that's not how they're being marketed,
Marketed. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I actually just recently listened to a podcast all about Hermes, and they're obviously made not in China. And just interesting to me that these items like Hermes or some of these other luxury brands, where their value increases as the price goes up.
Yeah. Usually, so like a Birkin bag, first of all, you can't even get a Birkin. Like I couldn't walk in a store and buy a Birkin.
Right.
You walk in and maybe if they like the look of you and they like your style, you can get an appointment, or you come in and you might get asked if you want to see a bag. And what happens with the Birkin bags is, they don't even, it's not like, oh, here's our selection. They just bring you a bag.
Yeah. You don't get to design it or pick it or anything.
Yeah. It's just like, here's the bag, but these are like investment pieces. So you buy a bag for $20,000 and 10 years later, it's worth $40,000, So listen, I get like from a collectible sense, I think you guys as guys understand. It's like they're collectible pieces, you know? I have a Chanel bag that I bought when I got my first paycheck, you know, when I say first paycheck, but you know, I was waitressing and, you know, made a couple $1,000s in tips. And I was like, shit, I'm going to go buy a Chanel bag. And I did. And I remember going into Neiman Marcus and it was like, and I still have that Chanel bag. And I look at that and I'm like, I'm passing this down to my kids. You know, this is going to be my kid's Chanel bag, my girls. So there's something, you know, you got the guys collect all the sneakers and all of that. And they, you know, so it's the same type of thing.
Yeah. I just think that's I would say a Chanel bag holds a little more weight than a pair of Jordans, even the best pair of Jordans or any other pair of sneakers. Do you know the origin of the Birkin bag, how it came to be?
Yeah, it was the actress.
Yeah, so Jane Birkin.
Yeah.
She used to carry around a wicker basket for all her stuff, and she was putting it on a plane in the overhead compartment. And this is obviously way back in I think 60s or 70s, whatever. And the CEO of Hermes was there and noticed her struggling. She's like, yeah, I would love to have something like this with a zipper closure and maybe a little bit more easy to travel with. And then he created the Birkin bag. And now it's just like a crazy industry.
I would like to own a Birkin bag one day.
Yeah, it's just, I didn't realize until I listened to the podcast, like the whole process of getting one, you know, in terms of you have to actually just be earmarked for one as opposed to just walking in off the street. Interesting company, Hermes. But that's all to say, if I found out, if I had, you know, an Hermes tie or an Hermes scarf and I found out it was actually made in China, I would be furious.
Well, and here's the other thing too. I can tell you, I know a lot of people that carry around fake bags from China, knowing they're fake, not like, oh, we found out this designer bag was made in China. You can go on TikTok. I get links sent to me all the time. I have DMs from different manufacturers and they send you stuff and it looks so real. You cannot tell the difference. It's 100% leather. So the whole designer bag industry, I think is a little tainted right now as a result of that. Because you can't tell. You literally can't tell.
No, you'd have to have a super trained eye to even notice. But then it begs the question. It's like, well, what are you trying to? Are you just trying to impress your friends that you're willing to get this fake bag?
Right.
And what's even the point? I don't know. That speaks to another societal problem.
Whole
I
other,
think.
totally.
Yeah. Sweet. Some other sad news. Did you see that chopper that crashed into the Hudson?
Yeah. It was like
not much to discuss except the fact that I don't know. It just seems like in the last like 2 to 3 months between mishaps with planes and
it doesn't seem like it is 100% happening. Yeah.
Like
I don't
understand
a ton of aviation accidents. You know, this was crazy because I was watching the footage and so the pilot was actually a former Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Which I was talking to a friend about it. And I actually said, I'm like, you know, we were talking about I've never been on a helicopter. I have no desire to go on a helicopter. I don't know. They, you know, and
does it scare you?
Yeah, I think, in some way, just because there's so many helicopter accidents, you know, so I'm not going to pick like a joyride on a helicopter. Right. But if my pilot was like, yeah, I was a Navy SEAL, I'd be like, all right, I'm cool. You know, I'd be like, we're good. As opposed to just some guy who got his helicopter's pilot's license. But I guess he ran out of gas is what he radioed in that he was running low on fuel and he would be back in 3 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, he wasn't back. But what I didn't understand is when you watch that footage, you see the propeller has been separated. And they said it had something to do with like the Jesus nut or the Jesus lug, which is like what attaches the propeller to the helicopter. But that kind of stuff, I mean, that's horror movie stuff when you saw them going in. And then the other thing that killed me about this whole thing is that You know, it was a family of 5 from Spain, 3 little kids. They were celebrating the one kid's birthday. Two of the people, and they haven't announced who it was, but 2 of the people made it out alive. So because 4 were dead on impact and 2 were taken to the hospital and later died. And just to think about the fact that you know, somebody was still alive. It just
I was talking to a buddy of mine who flew Blackhawks, and I was like, how does this keep happening? He said with this one, given the mechanical issue that you mentioned, he probably thinks, and I'm totally speculating, he's speculating, but he thinks it could have been somebody just pencil whipping standard maintenance checks and not actually checking thoroughly to make sure that everything was in place. And maybe it was expensive to replace if they did in fact find it. So that's even harder to swallow if I'm, this family, that this is not something that should have happened. Because obviously, like, if you get in a car, the idea, if you get in a car accident, you could be doing the exact right thing, but someone else swerves and hits you. That's on them. It's not like there's thousands of helicopters flying. You're in the air, and short of, running into buildings in Manhattan, there's nobody else you can run into or anything that should happen. So it's just really unfortunate that just this wave of aviation accidents that we've seen in the last few months. Crazy. Sad. And then the last thing I got before we head to our interview, Elon Musk tweeting about AI, and he said AI will far exceed the best humans in reasoning. And as a kid who grew up and watched Terminator 2 at a bunch of sleepovers when I was younger, that kind of scares me that we put so much reliance. Don't get me wrong, I use AI for various things, but I don't love the idea of eliminating humans, especially when it comes to reasoning and having a conscience. So I was just curious what you thought about AI in general and where it is, and if you think ultimately it can take over for humans.
I mean, AI is fascinating to me, and AI is the scariest thing in the world. Yeah. I mean, it's terrifying. So, I'm terrified of, and I don't doubt that what he's saying is correct. And that's what's so scary.
Yeah. What's scary though too is if people just put their full faith and trust in AI. So I've used ChatGPT for questions, and it's given me an answer. And I was like, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. And I push back, and they're like, oh wait, yeah, you're right. So it's like, wait a second. So AI is not, 100% right all the time.
There's some scary, what makes me real nervous too is about like the video. So I was watching, it was a video deposition, and I'll have to find the clip, but it was a video deposition where they had the lawyer on. Everybody's on like Zoom, right? So the judge says something and the lawyer comes on and he says, I'm representing so-and-so, and he is putting in a charge of not guilty. And she was like, now and the judge goes, now whose counsel is that? And then a guy in the courtroom goes, that's not a real guy. That's AI. Has anybody seen that? It was freaking and she was like, wait, did you see it, Sans? It was crazy. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit.
She freaked out on him. She was like, hold on, wait, stop, pause the video. And he was like, she was asking him, she's like, did you bring counsel? She's like, that's my counsel. I generated that.
Yeah.
Like, he generated an AI counsel to give his defense speech instead of actually standing up in front of the jury and giving them a speech. He just generated an AI counsel. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was madness. Yeah.
So you think about conspiracy theories and all of that, like it is going to go Richter scale, when you think about it from that perspective. So that's the kind of stuff that scares me for sure.
Yeah. Cause also the law, that's not one of the first areas I would think when we talk about leveraging AI. I would think that would more than anything need humans to decipher what the heck is going on. But then you think like, so much of the law is just understanding precedent. So if you have a machine that can just read through court documents and spit out what your defense should be, I get it, but I don't love AI in a courtroom at all. That's wild to me. So
That was the craziest part. It literally looked like a real person. Like they come chime in and
good looking guy. Yeah. I was like, I want him for my counsel. Yeah.
That shit was scary. I was like, God, that's nuts.
Yeah. Oh, that is definitely scary. All right. This past weekend was the Masters. Big win for Rory McIlroy. So let's dive into our conversation with Chad Mumm, talk about the Masters, full swing, and military golf in general. As Chad Mumm is a military brat. So we'll kick it over to Chad right now. Joining us now, very interesting guy, Mr. Chad Mumm, who is the founder and president of Pro Shop Media Company. He is the executive producer of Full Swing on Netflix, which just released its third season, right? Season
3, yep.
Recently. And originally, I was going to have Chad join us last week to do like a preview of the Masters. But now we were recording Monday after the Masters, and I am so happy it worked out this way. And I was just telling Chad right before we started, I'm the only golf nut on this show. So I am excited to go deep. And I should also mention, you might be thinking to yourself, why is a golf guy on the show? Well, Chad is also a military brat. Grew up playing golf courses on military installations all over the world. So we're going to get to that too. But Chad, welcome to Bold American. How you doing, buddy?
You know, I think I'd need like a week off after yesterday. It was a emotional roller coaster. I'd say, look, I'm completely biased. I'm a golf sicko, as you could probably guess. But that had to be up there for just one of the great sports events of the 21st century. You know,
that's what I'm saying.
The Cubbies winning the World Series, you know, Usain Bolt breaking the record. Like, hard to imagine a better moment for golf than the chaos and drama of yesterday at the Masters.
Yeah, just if you're a sports fan in general, or even not even a sports fan, just a fan of the human race, I don't know how you could watch that yesterday and not feel so many emotions. So, I mean, just take me through your day. How were you feeling going into it? Are you a Rory guy? Were you, given that I have to imagine those Full Swing cameras were rolling.
Oh, so, we're always rolling, baby. We're always rolling. I love the drama.
How did you feel about yesterday?
Yeah, so I've been at Augusta all week. I just got back today. And, the narrative for that tournament is always the most exciting event of the year. It's the first major. There's all kinds of storylines. The last few years, obviously, since post-Tiger, it's like, who's going to take up the mantle? Obviously, you got all the live guys back in the field. It's the first time we're seeing everybody together. You've got Rory coming off like the biggest heartbreak. If we'd have done the show last week, I would have told you Rory was still my pick. He's playing the best golf of his life. He's won the 2 of the 3 biggest PGA Tour events this year. He won the Players and he won the Pebble Beach. And it just felt like he had something. We hadn't really seen much out of Bryson because he's been playing on live, and they're in their sort of international swing, so they're on at like crazy hours.
So not to mention, no one's really watching it anyway.
Also, yes, not many people are watching it. But I would have picked Rory anyway, and to see that to get the head-to-head match, like it's like a producer's dream, it's a storyteller's dream. I've had Rory's been in the show since season 1 of Full Swing. He's been always willing to sit down for an interview and give us access, even after like all these heartbreaks and close calls he's had. And so, I'd say I'm a Rory guy in the sense that anybody who is willing to lean into our show and actually show up and answer the hard questions on camera and let the cameras into their lives, I'm going to be a huge fan of theirs. But just from a pure narrative perspective for golf, like I think the idea of, one, you've got this new generation. You've got Bryson, you got Jon Rahm, you got Scotty Scheffler, you got Xander Schauffele, you got kids like Ludwig Oberg, the hot Swede. There's just like a bunch of new talent. And I think that the idea of now Rory having, one, it was amazing to have him get the Grand Slam and to kind of finally get it done after so much heartbreak at Augusta and barely got it done. I mean, it was like a Greek myth, like watching this thing come, like how low will you have to be pulled before you can finally come back to the gods? That was Rory yesterday. But I think the other thing that I love about it is it sets up this awesome narrative for the next like 5 years of majors, because that question of can Rory get it done? It's like now he can be free. And so I love the idea of like we get to have like Rory versus Scotty and Scotty versus Bryson and Bryson versus Rory and all these guys like battling it out for the next few years. It just feels like it frees it up. And I think it's great for golf. I'm happy for Rory. And I mean, I think my blood pressure was like an all-time high yesterday, whether you're a fan or not. Just the heartbreak that was right there for him. I mean, oh my God.
Right. And you talk about blood pressure. Rory even mentioned going into the round, he was incredibly nervous. And I think you'd have to be a robot not to be incredibly nervous. It's not lost on him that he's had this monkey on his back. It's not lost on him that he's been the de facto face of the PGA Tour the last few years versus Liv. So, what do you make of now he gets that monkey off his back? Do you see him playing differently at not only Augusta, but just moving forward? Now that he's like, all right, check, career Grand Slam, only sixth guy all time to ever do that. Now let's really open it up because I got nothing to lose.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you see how free he plays at normal tour events. Like he played free at Players. His performance at Pebble Beach on an iconic stage, it's like he knows how to win those events. He's won all these PGA Tour events. You see what it looks like when he takes flight and kind of plays free. And then you get to the majors and they're just so hard to win. And the pressure is so real for him, and it's like, I saw him hit almost back to back the best shot I've ever seen a pro golfer hit and the worst shot I've ever seen a pro golfer hit. Like dumping it into the water on 13 with a wedge in your hand is like, you could give every PGA Tour player or pro golfer 100 shots from that spot and none of them are hitting in the water once. And that just shows you the pressure that was on him. But then to turn around and follow it up with the iron shot, hooking it around the tree on 15, 7-iron from 200 and something yards. I mean, that'll go down as one of the best shots in the history of the Masters, and 1000%. Like that, like, how does that come out of the same person? And it just shows you what it means and the pressure. So I do think he'll be freed up. I feel like now, by the way, he's won a bunch of PGA Tour events at Quail Hollow where the next major is. He's going back to Ireland at Royal Portrush. I think he's won there before on the DP World Tour. So, like, you gotta like him. I mean, Oakmont's a wide open course, like great for his driving, so I just think it frees it up. And I think it creates like this opportunity that golf had back in the sort of 70s and 60s where you had like all-time greats just going at it at each other every single year. You had Gary Player, you had Lee Trevino, you had Jack Nicklaus, you had Arnold Palmer, and these guys would just show up and beat each other up at majors. And it was like, who was going to come out on top? And I feel like, having Rory where there was always going to be an asterisk or a question mark for him in the majors. Now I think it's like, hey, the monkey's off his back. If he never won another major, he's already, he was already a Hall of Fame career, but now he's like in the pantheon of all-time greats. I think it writes his story as the all-time greatest European golfer. And I think from now it's like, hey man, go swing free. You got that monkey off your back. And I mean, I can't imagine anybody going through more than what he went through yesterday and all the people out there watching.
And you talk about like the ups and downs, like anybody who's ever picked up a golf club, and of course, golf sickos know, like, of course, you always follow up an amazing drive. The running joke is that amazing drive, duff the chip. Yeah. So like, we can kind of relate to him in that regard. And I don't want to, pump my own tires, but I did win a mini golf tournament last week and I had a very big putt on a playoff in 18. So I get the pressure.
That's right, baby.
From that standpoint,
it's just golf. Golf is such a human. There's so much humanity in it. I always talk about golf as like the ultimate. It's like life in a way that no other team sport is, because life isn't a team sport all the time, and you're kind of ultimately left with your own decisions and what's inside your head, and you can choose how you live your life or what things you do, how you pursue family or career or whatever, all these things. But ultimately, it's like you're alone in the universe. Mm-hmm. It's like up to you. And I think golf, more than any other sport, you're out there on an island. There's no one else you can blame. There's nowhere to hide. It's completely quantifiable. It's not like a scouting report where we're like, okay, this guy's got great talent. We think they're going to be a great system player, whatever. It's like, it's just a number. Like, did you shoot a lower number than the other guys? So it's cruel in a way that, no other sport can be. And I love, one of my favorite writers is this guy, Spencer Hall, who, he's an internet guy. You can follow him at EDSBS, but he wrote a thing about golf a couple of weeks ago that I thought was so smart. And it's like, the thing that makes it so good and compelling to watch is there's no kind of floor to how far a player can fall.
I saw that. Yes.
It's like watching someone drown on dry land in the prison of their own mind. And it really is like, you could put Rory in any of those spots, 1,000 times and he'll hit that shot. And to see the pressure and then to know that there's no depth to how far he could fall in that moment. I mean, he could have shot 90 after dumping it into the creek. And so the humanity of like coming back and continuing to fight I think it's just a great sports story, whether you like golf or not, and then to see the emotion pour out of him at the end, is really like what we all do it for, man. It's why we watch sports. It's why I love sports. You can't write this shit. It's like, it is not, you couldn't script it. The drama is so real. The human emotions are so real. I'm still buzzing.
No, understandably so. And something you mentioned though, that's interesting. A couple of things. Number one, like, we've seen Rory break down at Augusta before. We've seen Rory with a lead and everybody wanted him to do it for the sake of the history, and he didn't get it done. So I think that aspect of it, that human aspect, he had like everybody behind him, but more so I think behind him, whether you like Liv or you don't like Liv, you took an individual sport and you said like, all right, Rory, like, well, now we're all kind of on this PGA team together and you go be our mouthpiece. So he's had this burden for 3 years of dealing with all the press conferences. What's going to happen to the game of golf? I have to imagine winning yesterday, beating a Liv guy. It's just a collective, like, deep breath, sigh of relief. Okay, I don't have to be the face anymore. And maybe we can move on from Rory being that guy. Because you're right. The last couple of years, he's been doing okay. But recently, it seems like he's been playing better. So what do you make of maybe now he can walk away from being this spokesman that he's been forced into?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So we filmed with him last year, obviously for season 3 of Full Swing, which is on Netflix now. If you want to go catch up, you can watch all 3 seasons, binge it on your next flight. But Rory was the centerpiece of season 2, which was really kind of built around him being at the center of this fight between Liv and the PGA Tour. And then last year, after the season wrapped up, I was with him. So I'm also one of the producers on Happy Gilmore 2, which we'll just do a little plug for that. Which is, I'm so pumped, coming out, in July on Netflix as well. And I had all those guys on set with Sandler. He's like, I want this golf movie to be way more authentic than the first one. I want real PGA Tour players. I want Liv guys. I want LPGA. I want legends of the game. So we brought like 30 of these players and legends and across the history of golf and modern day guys. But we had Rory and Bryson there for like 2 weeks together. And it was really interesting to see them and their dynamic. And Rory had obviously lost to him in the extremely heartbreaking fashion at Pinehurst at the US Open last year. And they just, even if there wasn't the dynamic between Liv and the PGA Tour, they're two polar opposites in every kind of way they do. The way they live their life, the kind of like people they surround themselves with, like they're just total opposites. And it's like oil and water. And so seeing them on set together was really interesting because it was like, they're there to make a comedy movie with Adam Sandler. It's like, they're all having fun, but it's like, it was frosty even then, like in an environment that if you should ever be chill, it's like, it's that environment, but you could just tell not a lot of love lost between the two of them. And I think Rory told me when we were hanging out on set, he's like, listen, I'm done with the Liv Tour fight. Like, I'm only going to worry about me now. Like I spent 2 years of my life wasted trying to be an advocate for something that I thought I believed in, only to watch basically the decision makers that were kind of things that were out of my control keep stalling that thing out. And so at this point, he's like throwing up his hands and he's basically like, okay, well, whatever, like I can control what I do. And I'm going to like dial it back in. And I saw a shift, like, he, even with our cameras and us being around, it's like, he was a different person at the beginning of this season. Like the intensity was there. The sort of relentlessness was there. You could tell he had sort of put aside, like, whatever happens in pro golf is out of my control at this point. I tried for a year and a half and now I can only focus on me. And I think it's, you could see it coming. And I think like being the favorite going into the Masters is always tough, but then to pull it off, to claw it out of like, literally claw it out of the depths of the most despair you could ever experience and get it done finally. And I mean, the other thing is to have a putt to win the Masters that's like 6 feet on the 72nd hole. You know that since he was like 5 years old, he's been sitting at, it's been sunset dusk. It's the last putt. He's telling himself, 11-year-old Rory McIlroy, I got this putt to win the Masters, and he's draining it. I mean, it's a moment you think about your entire life. And then you miss it. And you're like, you never get another chance, like ever. It's like, that's it. That was your moment. And somehow he got another chance and then he hit the shot. It's like, knock it all out. Like, you know what? I don't want a 6-foot putt. Give me a 2-foot putt to win.
Let's leave no doubt this time.
It's like you just don't, in golf, you don't get those kind of second chances. And the fact that he did, and he got himself there. It was just, that's the beauty of Rory. That's why I think he especially for like, look, I'm almost 40 years old. Like Tiger was the reason I got into golf, when I really got serious about it when I was in like a freshman in high school, and I got obsessed and started playing really competitively. But Rory's like my guy. He's like my age, kind of, he's sort of like, he was the elite player of the generation as I became an adult. And then obviously I became a father, and I got married, and I got into, my career, and I've been sort of paralleling, he's been in that parallel experience, and like real life adulthood, it's like, it's got its ups and downs. And I think Rory, to his credit, has always been way more transparent in terms of his emotions and his willingness to kind of tell you how he's feeling. And that's like, that's kind of gotten him in hot water a lot, frankly, but you love that out of athletes. And, Tiger Woods was so dominant, like just so dominant. I mean, it was like, and he didn't give you anything. It was just, It was fun to watch dominance for dominance sake. And I think that for Rory, like the ups and downs and the heartbreak and the triumph over it, like it's almost more interesting because he's so flawed in his ability to get this done, and it's like Tiger was like, he would have made that putt like 30 out of 30 times. You get
probably
you give him a putt to win the Masters. It's like, it doesn't matter. He is willing that ball in the hole. And even for Rory, in the most pivotal moment, to kind of do it his way, which is like fall off the mountain, but then climb right back up again.
Yeah,
it's relatable to me and I think my generation in a very very specific way, and I'm happy for the guy, and I'm sure he had a lot of Guinnesses and red wine last night. I'm hoping
and rightfully so. No, and I'm 40, so I'm right there with you in terms of when Tiger ascended. That's like middle school, and it's like, whoa, this dude is for real. And then Rory kind of right behind him. So it's special to see a guy that you've kind of just grown up watching, because I'm like you, where it was around like 11 or 12 that I started playing golf. But it wasn't until I think like, college, and then after college in the Army, where I really got crazy about it. So, and Rory was right there. And, you mentioned Rory loving second chances. You mentioned Rory opening himself up and allowing his emotion to be worn on his sleeve. One of the key storylines of Full Swing this past year was the almost divorce that Rory had last year. I can't imagine putting my personal life with my wife and my children in a serious manner out there for the world to see. And then the redemption, you talk about coming back, there's his wife and daughter waiting for him as he walks off of 18. Like, Chad, what kind of like puppet strings do you have behind the scenes that all of this is happening?
I mean, when we first started doing the show, it took me 9 years to get all the rights together. It's like the ultimate. I've been a TV producer. I worked in media before, but then I've been a television producer the last kind of 12 years, and I started having some success making some shows for Netflix and HBO and some other places. And, I'm like, there's got to be a Hard Knocks for golf. That was my, before Drive to Survive, it was like Hard Knocks for golf. I first pitched the PGA Tour on it in 2012. It took till 2019 for them to finally say yes to me. It took like a new commissioner, basically. It was like Jay Monahan became commissioner. We tried again. He was like, okay, I can see why this would be a good idea. So then we started down that path. It took another 2 years to get all the majors on board. So Augusta and the USGA, US Open, British Open, PGA Championship, all that. And then it took a whole nother year to convince all the players that they could sort of trust me and that this thing would be good for them. So it was like this almost decade-long process of getting the show made. But the timing of it couldn't have been better, because season one, our cameras start rolling, and all of a sudden the live thing happens. So you've got this like probably the most dramatic moment in the history of pro golf in terms of like things outside the ropes, like the macro storylines. You got like heroes and villains on both sides. It's like, it's a great narrative storytelling. And then we had the Ryder Cup and we had the Scotty arrest. I mean, now you got Rory like finally winning the Masters in like the most dramatic fashion. By the way, I have no idea. Like, you guys don't even know what we're in for at the Ryder Cup at Bethpage. I mean,
oh my God,
you guys know. It's like those fans, like those New York fans, it's going to be like someone could die. I'm really like, it is a completely.
Well, our guy Trent from Foreplay, who I know he said he's expecting a shove. He doesn't know where it's going to come from, whether it's the gallery, a player, whatever, caddy. There's going to be a shove. He's predicting a shove.
It's going to be, it'll be. I mean, we saw it almost boil over with like Rory and, and Cantlay's caddy at the last Ryder Cup
and Joey LaCava,
But this is like in Long Island, it's like, So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely sometimes you try something for a long time and then you never give up on it, and then it happens and the universe kind of rewards you for the perseverance. That's how I feel about Rory. That's a little bit how I feel about making the show. And it's changed my life. I went full into golf now. I left the studio that I was running and I'm all in on golf. And, it just feels like some things happen for a reason. I'm glad we just kept at it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in this life in general, so much is work ethic and pushing yourself and persevering through hard times. So in your case, knowing you had a good idea and persevering through that decade, whatever, how long it was, and repitching it. But then you could not have predicted any of the stuff that has happened in the PGA Tour world. But I'm curious, was the downfall of Tiger in his personal life and how that got exposed, and that was the first time I feel like a golfer's personal life really got put on blast. Was that in the back of your mind when you were originally thinking about Full Swing, or was it something else altogether?
It was not. It was more just I felt like golf was an underappreciated sport from a general sports fan's perspective because the weight of the mental challenges of it, and also the fact that it's like such a weird traveling circus, and that all the players are kind of independent contractors. There's just a lot I thought that was full of drama. If you could get behind the scenes of it, that you could make interesting for a general audience. Like they all have like really attractive wives or girlfriends, and they like are millionaires and CEOs, and they're flying around on private jets and they're doing their own thing. Like if you're on a, NBA team or an NFL team, it's like, it's all organized by the team. You're
Right.
like on a contract. These guys are all like independent. And so they can kind of build their own lives in their own way that they want. But it's also a lot like high school in the sense that you are like, imagine, if you all remember senior year, like how you felt senior year of high school, you're like, I own the campus. Like I paid my dues. Like that's what it's like out there in pro golf, like the PGA Tour. Cause all those guys, whether you're a top 50 player or a top 250 player, whatever, it's like you are the best and you've been playing with these guys your whole life. And so you get out there and you kind of have this feeling, it feels like being seniors, but imagine being seniors for like decades. That's kind of the vibe. And it creates these kind of cliques, and it creates kind of this upstairs, downstairs thing. And every single week, the whole tour like up and moves to a new place, but it's the same people there. It's the same sort of tables in the cafeteria that sit together and the same dynamic. And if you're new, you kind of have to find your spot. And, and it just, to me, felt like a really interesting backdrop for human stories. And then also it's a sport that you don't really win that often. It's like a low winning. You could be one of the best players of all time if you win like 5% of your tournaments. That's like best ever. Mm-hmm. And so it's also like when your brain wants, thinks of yourself as a winner, but all you do is lose over and over and over again. It feels like the weight of a win just gets even bigger. And I was like, that'll be a great payoff to some of these human stories. So I always thought it had the potential. I also loved that the PGA Tour, when we first set up the show, was like a real meritocracy, which, we're going to talk about my background with the military. And obviously this is Bold American. So I want to talk about our American values, but I feel like PGA Tour does have that. Like that was actually the first page of my deck when I pitched it to Netflix was, this is the ultimate and only true meritocracy in sports. Because like we talked about earlier, like there is no guaranteed money on the PGA Tour. I mean, there wasn't back then. There sort of is a little different now, but it's like you pay your own way to show up at a tournament. If you miss the cut, you walk away with like nothing, but you're also like in the red because you spent the money to travel there and have your caddy there. And, and like you miss a couple cuts in a row, like it's 10 to 15 grand per week to go and play these tournaments. It starts to add up. And like, and also the fact that like you have to earn your way onto the tour. You have to keep your way into the tour. It is this kind of ultimate meritocracy in a way that, like, again, it's completely just quantifiable. It's like, did you shoot a lower number than the other guy? It doesn't matter all the other extraneous stuff. You're not going to get a favorable draft. You're not going to get traded because you're upset with the coach and you want to live in LA. Like none of that stuff. It's just like, did you shoot a lower number? And that meritocracy, I feel like is sort of unique to golf in a way that, because it's so quantifiable, because you're kind of out there on your own. I thought that was going to be a good backdrop, and certainly paid off in that way.
Certainly. And I think, the advent of social media, we'll say in the last decade, and as people have started to get a more of a glimpse into professional athletes' lives. And also, I just think for so long, people viewed golf as, well, that's a country club sport, and everybody who gets into golf and is a pro golfer, they grew up with a cushy life, and a lot of them did. A lot of them did grow up playing at country clubs, but some of them didn't, and I think that's what makes it compelling, and the human aspect that people do want to see what these guys are actually like.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised too. That actually was something that surprised me, even because I obviously didn't grow up playing at country clubs, and I kind of had that same assumption. Even as a diehard fan and as someone who followed it all closely, I was kind of like, yeah, these are a bunch of like rich kids who grew up like with perfect conditions and amazing balls at the range, and they could go play whenever they wanted. And it's like, and then you get out there and you realize like those kind of kids like wash out, like they can't handle it. They can't handle the pressure because they've had it sort of silver spooned. And so you really like shockingly the tour is like generated from like middle class or low, like less than middle class. Obviously there's a certain level of expense to be able to play golf in general. It is sort of like, it's expensive sport to play. It's expensive to practice. The gear is expensive. It's not like soccer where you can just like go kick a ball
or a basketball. Yeah.
But relative to what you'd expect, I think I've been surprised that, it isn't very country club heavy. It's it's very middle class. And I look at a player like Brooks Koepka as like a perfect example. Like Brooks is super middle class upbringing. He wears that on his shoulder, like that chip on his shoulder. He thinks that everyone's soft in golf in general. He wants to treat it like a real sport. And even Rory like didn't grow up. These guys don't come up like from a lot of money. Now they make a ton of money now, but they didn't. They didn't come from it. And one of the interesting things. So when I first sold the show to Netflix, we brought in the team that makes Drive to Survive and the guys from the UK, Box to Box Films, and I met with them. We had a dinner here in LA and they were like, and I was like, well, so what interests you about coming into the show? And the founder of that company, this guy, James Gay Reese, who, by the way, like directed one of my favorite docs ever, Senna. If you've ever seen Senna, it's like an incredible documentary. He won an Oscar for the Amy Winehouse doc, just an incredible filmmaker. He's like, the thing we've learned about sports is that like, no matter what, if you get behind the curtain, it's never what people think. So he loved the idea that even though he wasn't a huge golfer or a golf fan, he's like, look, I know enough about sports in general that if people come to this show with this preconceived notion about what this world is like, it's for old rich white guys, it's an elitist sport, it's going to be so easy to subvert those expectations like in the first 5 minutes, because anytime these pro athletes just never like that. It's all you need is a little bit behind the curtain and you realize that all these things you thought existed is like, it's completely the opposite. And I thought that was a really cool way to think about it from his perspective, because he's like, okay, why do a golf show? He's like, because I know that behind the scenes, everything that people have in their head about this sport is wrong. And I think that makes for a good hook that you can get people excited in kind of the first 5 minutes, which is everything about Netflix. Get them hooked, pull them through, get them streaming, baby.
Yeah, get them streaming, get them binging, and that's how it is. And you talked about origins, so let's get to that, Chad. Like, what is your origin? You grew up, your parents were both in the military. One parent was in the military. What is your origin story as it relates to the military? Yeah,
so my dad was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. I was born in Kadena, which is the Air Force base in Okinawa, Japan. Moved around a ton as a kid, like the classic kind of military brat experience. My grandfather was also a fighter pilot, actually. And so my dad, in kind of classic Top Gun fashion, like took a pass at the colonel's daughter, when he was 24 as a second lieutenant, gets stationed at Hickam in Hawaii and takes a little run at the head, at the colonel's daughter. And that's how he met my wife or my mom.
Wow.
And so they became good friends. So the, flying and the military, and particularly like the Air Force, is like really in my family's DNA. So, my grandfather, my father, my uncle, my uncles were fighter pilots. They flew, A-10s and helicopters and F-16s. I have a great uncle that was actually an astronaut, which is kind of wild. So he's got some amazing stories. He was a Navy pilot that was kind of in the second astronaut class and actually got to ride on Saturn V and did the Apollo Soyuz mission where they linked up with Russians in outer space. By the way, an amazing story about that. It's the only time that the astronauts ever flew with a sidearm, because technically it was like during the Cold War, and it was more for show, but the Pentagon was like, what if they try to take the spaceship? Like, what are you going to do?
I mean, it's a fair question given where we were at in history with Russia at that point. So that's fair.
Yeah. So they had
That's crazy.
NASA issued, like, whether it was the Beretta, I think it was the Beretta was the standard sidearm, sort of military sidearm. But it was like all white. It's like a family heirloom. I'm like,
that's so cool. Wow.
Anyway, so dad was a fighter pilot. So I was born in Japan, moved to Langley, which is in Virginia. Then he went to like officer warfare school to do kind of his desk stuff down in Montgomery, Alabama. Then we ended up at Eglin in Florida. That's when I really got into golf. There's a bunch of great golf courses, the Eagle and the Falcon down in Niceville, Florida. And he was the head of the ops. He was the ops officer for the weapons testing squadron down there. And then he became the commander of the Thunderbirds. So we moved to Nellis in Las Vegas when I was like, I guess that would have been 96, 97. So I was 10. And actually, you know, as you know, the Thunderbirds, they do these check rides for celebrities. And my dad asked me when he got the job, he's like, hey, you know, I get to kind of invite celebrities to go ride in the F-16s and go fly with the T-Birds. He's like, who would you like to see? And I had 3 requests. I was like, Tiger Woods, Han Solo, and Joe Montana. And he was able to pull them all off. So I got to throw football with Joe Montana, who was my hero. I got to, you know, see Tiger Woods. And, you know, in 96 is when he flew with Thunderbird. So this was pre-Masters, but he was like just emerging kind of out on the tour. And then I got to hang with Harrison Ford while he was filming Air Force One, of all things. And I'll tell you a quick story about that because it was so epic. So like, you know, being 11 years old, right? Like Han Solo, Indiana Jones, this is your hero. You're like, build him up. And so we're like walking to go meet Harrison Ford. And he's like walking, he's in his flight suit. He's just about to go to the flight line to go fly. And he's walking away from us, but I see him and he's like all this gray hair, you know? And I'm like, it's like your heroes, like all old and decrepit looking because the hair's all gray. And I was like, oh my God.
Don't meet your heroes.
Don't meet my heroes, you know? And then someone, you know, said, it might've been my dad. He's like, hey, Harrison, I want you to meet my son. He turns around and gives me the full freaking Han Solo wry grin. I was like, yes, like I got the full beam of it. And obviously then I came to find out his hair was dyed for the movie. So that's, you know, president, whatever the president's name in Air Force One is. But yeah, so he was amazing. Tiger loved his flight. Montana did not. Like Montana, you know, his body was pretty beaten up after that, you know, after the NFL. And so they just kind of went and did some sightseeing. Tiger was like pulling G's and
and Tiger famously has had like a massive obsession with the military, given his father's background in the military and then all the other training that he's done with different units. Some would argue maybe not the best idea for his body. But that's not surprising to hear that he took to it really well.
He loved it, and he loved the preparation. My dad loves to tell the story about how they sort of do their briefings and how comparing how the Thunderbirds would practice to kind of how he would practice and how many shots and how many hours of the day he would rehearse his golf swing, just like how many hours they would rehearse, you know, their air show. So he really liked that. And obviously, you know, Tiger has a military background with his father and you know, a big connection to it. And then on my grandfather's side, so he was an F-100 pilot and an F-4 pilot and sort of twice in Vietnam, kind of as a middle to later part of his career. So he wasn't, you know, young in Vietnam. He just missed the Korean War as a pilot. And so anyway, so, you know, 2 tours of Vietnam, he was obsessed with golf because when he was flying F-100s, they did an exchange program with the RAF. And they were at Lucas Air Force Base, which is right outside of St. Andrews. And back then and still today, you know, the officers club was like a huge deal. It's kind of like not the same, I guess, anymore, I'm told. But the O Club back in like the 60s and 70s was just like happening.
It was very much more a thing. It was like back in that time, because I mean, I left active duty in 2011 and it wasn't as prevalent then. But back, because I remember hearing stories from my grandfather who similar time period, and it was like that's where you went on Fridays. That's where you went on Saturdays. It was a very big deal. So
it was like the center. Yeah, it was a real like social life. But they used to do golf matches. So the officers club would do golf matches against the Royal and Ancient Club, which is the, you know, managers of St. Andrews. And so we got really into golf. And then I remember like kind of my oldest memory of my grandfather is like, you know, after he'd retired, is like going to his house. He was the range commander in Nellis, and so retired in Vegas and kind of stayed in Vegas. He's still alive. He's turning 90 in 2 weeks. Still can shoot his age, which is amazing. But the earliest memory I have of him is like playing with all the dioramas and models of all the fighter jets that he flew, but also the house always smelled like mineral spirits because he was like a club builder and a hobbyist. So he'd be like re-gripping his buddies' clubs and he'd be like inventing like wedge grinds and all this stuff. And he was just such a tinkerer. So even at like 5 years old, I remember the house smelled like mineral spirits and going into his like garage where he had his shop and it was all about golf and about like building stuff. And then my first experience, I started playing when I went to a junior golf camp in Niceville at Eglin, and it was like a summer camp thing. So my dad had gotten like really obsessed with golf, right around that time. There's so much great golf in Florida. So I went and played this little tournament, got taught how to do it, ended up like winning the tournament as like a 7-year-old or 6-year-old, however it was, and was kind of hooked. And so for me, like every time we would move as a kid, it'd be like every 2 or 3 years we'd uproot. And golf was the thing that I recognized at the bases.
It was the constant for you.
It was the constant. It was also just like a constant culture, like there's a golfer culture that really, I think, reaches across generations. Yeah. And there's a reason my company now is called Pro Shop, because I felt like as a kid, the Pro Shop was the one place I always felt at home. And it didn't matter if it was at a military base or in a trailer somewhere or at Augusta National. It was like, you walk into a Pro Shop, if you're a golfer, it's like, I know this spot. I know this culture. Yes. It's like, I'm going to go fondle some putters. I'm going to look at some golf balls and maybe like mess with the tees. And there's a pro there who's going to answer my questions. It just felt like home. And so for me, golf was like going out to the range, beating balls. Like when things weren't going well at school, if I was moving around and trying to figure out who I was, like golf was always there for me. And then obviously my dad retired after the Thunderbird job, and we moved to Atlanta, and that's kind of when Tiger was like going nuts. So I sort of went full all in on golf. I was like, I'm going to be a golfer. But it's such a part of the Air Force culture too, which is funny. Like the joke is always you build the runway, and then you build the golf course, then you build the rest of the Air Force base.
Right. Yeah.
I remember my grandpa telling me stories when he was flying the F-100 where they would do these fly-ins. By the way, it's like you could never do this stuff these days, but they would literally like Friday night load up their fighter jets with like their golf bag, and they put them in like the travel pods that would hang under wing, like basically modified fuel pods, put their golf bags in there, cases of beer, and then just fly in. They just pick a spot. Like, okay, we're going to Nellis, or we're going to, whatever, Mesa, Arizona, or we're going, and guys would fly in their fighter jets and land, and they'd just park outside the O Club and the squadron. They'd drink all weekend. They'd play golf, and then they'd be like bleary-eyed flying back Sunday night, like
talk about a buddy's golf trip, like we do it now, and it's so tame compared to that. Jeez, I'm not flying my own fighter jet.
I know. I always thought it was sick to hear the story, to be able to like hop on someone's PJ to go on a golf trip. Can you imagine being like hopping your own fighter jet? So
that's
my grandpa, he told me a story coming back from one of those where he had, maybe had a little too much the night before, and he was hurting, and they were coming back in to Clovis, New Mexico, and some weather came up, and so he had to do like an ILS approach, and it was real hairy, and he just remembered thinking like, God, if I eat shit, coming back to this golf, like I'll never hear the end of it.
Yeah.
So
no, but it's so true, because we always, in the Army, we give the Air Force a hard time that everything's just nicer for the Air Force, and they're cushy, everything's air conditioned, and the golf courses are always better. So I had to deal with these Army courses. What were some of the courses that you really stick out? You've mentioned some, but like what were like the top 2 or 3 that you can remember that you really enjoyed playing?
Definitely the courses in Florida. The Eagle and the Falcon at Eglin is really nice. There's actually the Navy has a pretty decent course in Pensacola, I guess. NAS Pensacola. I don't remember the name of that course, but I've played that a few times, and I really love that course. Florida's just so conducive to golf. Not a military course, but Burning Tree in DC, private club that has such a military history is also kind of, it's the closest thing to a private military country club that exists. And that's an epic spot. If you love if you are like me, a big fan of America and serving your country, and appreciating people who serve your country, it's like you've got admirals and generals that are members there, and it's like a crazy legendary bartender who's been there forever. The Nellis golf course got a lot better. They sort of redid it like right as I was leaving, so I didn't like love the Nellis golf course. I'm trying to remember. There's one in San Diego that I've played a few times that's pretty good. But the Air Force always has the best golf courses for sure.
Yeah.
The one at Hickam is great in Hawaii. It's an awesome track. And like just the idea of like getting out there and seeing, it's like I always felt at home. And then my still favorite memory from the Eglin course is just like hearing the fighter jets like ripping overhead while you're playing golf. And that's why I love Torrey Pines so much. Like Torrey Pines is down in San Diego, and it's in the flight path for I guess it's NAS Miramar, and it's sick. Like you're just down there and you're hearing, there's F-35s flying over and two ship F-18s flying over. And, being in the big city, being in New York for a long time, being in LA now for a long time, it's like I miss that sound. Yeah. And you just I still get fired up to hear it.
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, it's America. I mean, like when I have an outing that I play every summer up at West Point, and it's right smack dab in the middle of all the training for the cadets. So there's always like Blackhawks flying overhead. You can hear the artillery exploding in the distance, and you're like, where else are you gonna see this on a golf course or hear this on a golf course? So it's pretty cool.
No, and it brings so many people together. Like all the great stories that my dad has from his years in the Air Force and his crazy friends and their crazy stories. I've heard them all like sitting at a bar having a beer like after a round of golf. And and it's a great way to learn about people and a great way to like spend time with people. And the game is hard enough as it is. It's like we can all kind of relate, but the idea of like whether you're at a military course or you're at a muni or you're at a private club, it's like we're all in this thing. Let's go. And then the post round beer, that's where it all happens. So I've heard some crazy stories. I mean, one that jumps to mind. So I'm a member at a place here in LA, and every Thanksgiving it's kind of when all the guests come in, and there's this guy in the bar, and he's like looks like a realtor or something, clean cut, mid 40s, high 40s kind of thing. So I'm like, I go up and introduce myself. I'm like, are you a guest? What's your deal? He's like, oh yeah, I'm here with so and so, and I'm like, well, what do you do? Like, thinking real estate. He's like, I'm a pilot. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What do you fly? He's like, F-18s. I was like, hey, awesome, but like no offense, like, aren't you a little old for F-18s? Like you got a little gray there. He's like, well, that's like my day job, but my other job is I'm the commander or the captain of the Nimitz. So I was like, okay. So,
that's interesting though. It's like even guys who go on to do other things in their military career, they kind of like still hold on to that. It's like if you were like if you were a Ranger in the Army, if you were a pilot and then in the Air Force or Navy, it's like you're always a pilot.
Totally. And actually I came to learn, I didn't know this was true, but you cannot be a commander or a captain of an aircraft carrier without being a pilot, because I guess Congress made a rule in the maybe late 70s is what he explained to me, because there were too many of these like ship guys, surface warfare guys kept killing pilots because they don't understand flying. And so you have to be a pilot. But of course, we had a great conversation and I had to ask about all the alien videos, I'm like,
of course.
What's the deal with the UFOs? Like, I asked him, we're like 5 drinks in, but we're sitting there and I asked him like, what's the deal with, have you seen that footage of the UFO, the Tic Tac flying around from that Navy jet? He's like, Chad, that was my HUD. He's like, I was the one who did the initial intercept. It was like, we were in the 2 ships.
Wow.
So, again, a story I would have never heard, and I asked him what he thought it was. He was like, honestly, I have no idea. Like I thought back then it was something. Now I feel like maybe it's something else. I kind of have a good sense of all the cool shit that we have now. And we definitely don't have stuff like that. But he's like, wouldn't put it past me if we did, who knows? But it's like all sitting around after a round of golf. Like, and by the way, by the time that conversation ended, he was the center of attention. Everyone was surrounding him. It's just,
of course,
golf does also, I think, engender a respect for tradition. And I think, that's like these PGA Tour players and live players, like they love the military. They love supporting the military.
Yeah. So speaking of that really quickly, and just a couple more questions after that, and we'll let you go because I've been bothering you long enough. Is there any intention or idea that you might highlight in future seasons of Full Swing, the connection that the game of golf has with the PGA Tour? And, there's just so many great organizations out there that focus on helping the military and veterans through the game of golf. So have there been any that you've come across or some that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think the Memorial, Jack Nicklaus's tournament does a lot with veterans, and and we haven't had that tournament as highlighted in the show as I might prefer, just because there's always other storylines that kind of have taken precedent in the past. But that would be a good one to really get into it, because they do support it a lot and they do a great job, and that's why it's called the Memorial. I would love to, the thing about Full Swing is you kind of have to follow where the stories lead. So if there's a player that emerges on the PGA Tour or on pro golf that has a real connection and that becomes a part of their storyline, well, absolutely, we would love to do that. I also, I own a media company now. We produce a bunch of content. Like, I would love to go and do a bunch of content like at military golf courses. My kind of dream like digital project, after all this other stuff would be like go and really showcase some of those stories, maybe bring some of these pros out to play with some of these servicemen and women and to kind of see the vibe of it. And by the way, also like there's some really good golf courses out there on military bases.
There is.
People would be surprised to hear about how good they are and like how much fun it would be to do. And it's like it feels like a win-win. So, I'd love to just like continue to kind of lean in and tell that story. Obviously the military, I think I wouldn't have been a good producer if it wasn't for being a military brat and having to like get to know how to shake someone's hand and look them in the eye and also like see what that kind of drive, but also commitment to like teamwork and a higher calling to serve or to, be the best at something. I mean, it's interesting. I learned that from my dad. It's like, that's the fighter pilot ethos. This is like, be the best. And that competitive fire I learned, but then also to pair that with tradition, and then also as a kid, like you move every 3 years, like you have to be good at meeting people, like I know some military brats that sort of ruined their life. Like they blame it for everything that's ever happened to them because they're like, I have no roots. And for me, I love being sort of rootless. It's like, anything's possible. If I could reinvent myself at 8 years old every 3 years as a kid up to high school, like why not now? Like I was a TV producer. Before that, I was in media, doing publishing. Now I'm in golf. Like I love the idea of being kind of rootless and know that like the world is there for your the taking. And I think there's like that's the kind of fighter pilot ethos. It's like have a lot of fun, but like be the best. And I think that's like what I've taken away from it. And obviously, I've just seen how much the military was so good to my family in terms of, supporting us, but teaching us those values and being kind of raised, I guess it'd be a bit rare. I mean, there's a lot of patriotic Hollywood people that I know and I've met, but it's always nice to meet people who really get it and who care and who are proud to be Americans. And I think it's, obviously I'm glad that you're doing this show. I think it's great.
I love that answer out of you because it leads into my next question. Bryson DeChambeau is one of those guys that reinvented his path, his story. When he first came on tour, he was a guy that wasn't very likable, it seemed, with that whole rivalry that was going on with Brooks. And now it's like you want to root for this guy when he steps up there. So what we saw on Saturday, he hits the putt on 18, and he's like, okay, we're going to have a fight. It's going to be a fight on Sunday. It's going to be, box office, get your popcorn ready. And then on Sunday, you see this collapse out of him. And maybe you can give some insight what golfers go through after a day like that. How do you kind of rebuild? Like, you're going in, you're 2 strokes down, and then Rory double bogeys the first, and you're like, I'm right there. I got this thing. Like, how does a golfer really push that away and be like, all right, on the next one, I'm going for it. Like, how does that work for them?
I think that they're all such alphas, even if, they approach it in a different way, but to them, they're like, Bryson's immediately like, I'm going to win the next one. There's no dwelling on it because they're confident in their abilities. And I think, they're pissed off like anybody else would be, and they're frustrated, but there's really no one else you can blame. It's like, it's all on you. And Bryson was, he was struggling with his irons all week and really made up for it with like amazing driving and amazing putting and amazing short game. And the thing about Augusta National is that golf course is so hard. And the only reason the scores are so low is because they play it every year and everybody kind of knows exactly what shots you have to hit. It's so freaking hard. And it also exposes your weaknesses in a really acute way. And I think that for Bryson, it was going to be really hard to hang on when you don't have your best out of your irons. And he had that left miss that kept coming up, and it ultimately killed him on 11. Like if he'd have hit it on the green and 2 putted and made par, he would have been right in it. Like, that left swing into that pond. I mean, we've seen Masters lost there so many times. That's why it's the beginning of Amen Corner. It's like, hold on for dear life. That shot and then the shot at 12, like you can't win the Masters there, but you can lose it. And I think Bryson's like, look, I was 3 swings away from being right there and being right in it. And he's confident enough in his preparation and his training that he's just going to be like, I'm going to win the next one by 10. Like that's the way they all think. Even you have like a Max Homa who's more introspective about kind of stuff like that. You got a Jordan Spieth who, but they all feel the same way. They're like, I'm the best golfer who's ever lived. Like that's their mindset. And so I think they bounce back like pretty, especially elite players like that. They bounce back. That's what made to me like Rory so interesting because he clearly like couldn't bounce back. Like he had this scar tissue that he could
Yeah.
never get exercised. And, as a mature golfer now, like I played as a kid and I played competitively as a junior golfer. And now like, I'm almost 40. I'm probably like the best I've ever been actually in terms of golf right now, but that's because I get to play a lot because it's part of my job. But I was so much like more fearless as a kid. And I remember like there's a shot at my home course that I hate because I've hit it out of bounds a bunch of times there, and I've got all this scar tissue, and it's like I dread that hole every time. And I think as you get older, and you hear like Ernie Els has talked about this a lot, some of these legends, it's like that scar tissue builds up. Like when you're 22 and you've got a 3-foot putt to win a major, like you make that because you've never missed a 3-footer to win a major. But then, you starts to stack up, and over playing for, decades, it's like you have close calls and you have shots you wish you could have back. And all of a sudden those things, it's not a blank slate. It's like you're remembering that, and that scar tissue gets bigger and thicker and harder, more calloused, and it gets harder to break through. And that's where I think like Rory was with the major drought. It's like Bryson has no scar tissue. He's like, he's a maverick in his own way. I love the way that he's sort of like invented his own way to play golf. He doesn't play by anyone else's rules. There's so much pressure in the ecosystem of pro golf to like bend towards the mean. And I think like, he's just never been willing to do that. And I appreciate anybody who kind of has their values and is like, I'm going to bend golf to me, not vice versa, because it's the same agents running around. It's the same brands running around. It's the same corporate clients. And they all want you to fit into this box of like what a PGA Tour player should look like or a pro golfer should look like. And Bryson's like, that's not my box. And I appreciate him that he never, he never has settled. He's never compromised for that. He's like, I'm not going to apologize for the way I do things. I'm going to do it my own way. And it, for good or bad, like it's going to either work or it's not. Clearly, like, I think he's a, it's really him, Tiger, or him, Rory, and Scotty, and to have 3 top golfers that are so different and so unique and go about it in different ways, but have transcendent talent, I think is really exciting. And I guarantee you Bryson's like probably hit 1,000 balls today and is like pumped to play the next time he gets to play. It's the golfer's curse. Like I could have the worst round of my life. And I can't wait to get back out. I'm never playing golf again. And then the next morning I'm waking up and I'm like, it'd be pretty sick to go play some golf.
Yeah. And you're helping these guys with Full Swing break out of that box that for decades people have thought of professional golfers in one singular fashion. And I think social media, but more so Full Swing, has really allowed them to break out of that box and humanize them. And, dealing with horrible things. You talk about Rory's divorce. You talk about Gary Woodland's brain tumor. Like it's horrible things, and they're sharing it with the world. And I think it's really it's doing great things for the game of golf. And clearly the game of golf has done a lot for the military community. You talk about overcoming scar tissue. I mean, it's been a great way for guys and girls who have dealt with a lot of mental health issues to overcome that. And I think it will continue to be that game. And as we see more organizations focus on the military and veteran community, I think we'll continue to help more and more individuals. And I hope that there's a storyline somewhere that maybe, I don't know, maybe your story, Chad, gets told on Full Swing, given your military background, because that could be cool too. And the last thing I want to, ask you about, and then I'll let you go. You did mention the executive producer role on Happy Gilmore. Now, I think by and large, there are 2 movies. There's like 2 golf movies that more or less get quoted anytime people are playing around, and that's Caddyshack, and especially for guys our age and younger, it's Happy Gilmore. So how do you feel about Happy Gilmore 2? Should those of us who grew up with Happy Gilmore be excited? I think some people are a little nervous, like what's going to happen. I love that Adam Sandler has gone like all in on all these guys. Like his tweet yesterday, congratulating Rory was freaking awesome. So I have really high hopes. What are your thoughts on Happy Gilmore 2?
Well, I want to just correct specifically. I'm a co-producer of the movie, so just to be specific, everything has they're all vanity credits anyway in Hollywood, but that one means something. So I got involved with that because Adam, as I said earlier, wanted the movie to be more authentic golf. I don't know if you guys saw his basketball movie Hustle, which is an amazing movie.
Oh, it was unbelievable, but it definitely had a different feel than any other Adam Sandler movie.
For sure. And the tone of it was obviously like much more intense and dramatic. But like what he learned from that was obviously he's a basketball sicko. And so he's like, I want the basketball to be really real. And he was sick of sports movies that, you know, that when you finally see the hero like throw a pitch or, you know, swing a golf club, it's like, that's not a pro, you know, and it breaks the immersion. So he like that whole thing was like real. It was like real basketball players, real coaches, and it felt real authentic. Even though the tone of Happy Gilmore is very different, it's a goofball comedy typical. He wanted the golf to feel really real. So like if you're going to land in a pro golf tournament, he wanted it to look much more built out than what they did, you know, for the Portland Open or something in the first one. He wanted to feel like you were actually there and looked like the real life thing. The majors, he wanted to feel real. And then he wanted like real cameos. You know, you had a little bit of Lee Trevino. You had Mark Lyon in that movie in the first one. Lee Trevino, by the way, like kind of hated that movie when he first saw it. And then over the years, it's become the thing that he gets approached the most about. And so
I mean, his role in it is just so funny. It's iconic.
So good. Yeah, no. And when when I reached out to his wife, Claudia, about being in the sequel, she was like, where have you been? Like, we've been waiting for this phone call for 6 months, you know?
That's awesome.
So Lee's back. But anyway, so Adam really wanted it to be more authentic. He wanted the golf to feel real. And there's the plot point. I don't want to give away anything about the movie, but there's definitely like a role for these players to play, these actual golfers as themselves, that are a little bit like Space Jam-esque. And so like there's and so he wanted like the big dogs. And so we got Rory, Brooks, Bryson, and Scotty out there for like 2 weeks these guys are like, they have a huge role in the movie. It's like a real part and they're acting and it's like, they're playing kind of caricatures of themselves, but it's not like a one day like walk through and shake hands in the locker room. I mean, they're like in scenes, you know? And so they needed to find a way to get all those guys to kind of come and wrangle it all. And so because of our relationship with Netflix from Full Swing, the head of sports there was like, oh, you should talk to Chad. So I met with Sandler and went into his office and, you know, kind of told him about, he like, let me read the script, which was like, it was like going into like a classified briefing. I mean, there was so locked down. I had to read it on a TV screen in a conference room, like scrolling with a mouse because it was like everything was distracted. It was wild. But anyway, he's like, all right, you read the script. Like, do you think we can get all these guys to say yes? And I'm like, for you, yes. It's just a matter of like landing them. But, you know, he was amazing because he called all of them personally. You know, I reached out to them and their agents and we started lining up. He'd get all their phone numbers. He'd call them. I mean, you asked Jordan Spieth, like, what was the coolest moment of his year? It was when Adam Sandler called and told him he was excited to have him come be on the movie. You know, it's like these guys grew up that perfect era. Like Gilmore was their thing. Yeah. And look, like Adam, they had a script. I think he told me they had a script for the second movie, like a year after the first one came out. And he's waited this long because he never was happy with how the story would unfold until this script. Like, he's like, now is the time. And Adam, you know, he didn't become Adam Sandler by luck. Like, the guy he's got immense talent, but he's also just like the hardest worker. He's basically like, he's in costume, full wardrobe. He's not directing the movie, but he's essentially kind of directing the movie. Even if he's like not in the scene, he's on set, he's giving notes, he's helping the guys, he's writing jokes, it's coming up with it on the fly. It's like, he was there for every second of that movie. And making a big movie like that is a grueling, grinding schedule. It's like a lot of these pro golfers were shocked by how long the days were. You know, it's like they've never had a real job. So like getting there before dawn and staying till it gets dark, like having to work and, you know, not just get to do whatever you want is like, you know, was kind of new to some of these guys. I think that's really, really funny. I think if you like the first one, it's got all the elements of the first one kind of leveled up a notch. I'm saying I'm going more Top Gun Maverick for this than I am like Beverly Hills Cop 2, like, or whatever the new one is. That's
love to hear that. Yeah. Love to hear that. All right, well, Chad, I feel like we could go another few hours, so maybe we'll just have to line up around for us to play together. But I really do appreciate you joining us. I appreciate what you're doing for the game of golf. You know, opening all these doors and giving the public a sight into this game that we all love so much. I appreciate and thank your family for their service to this country. The last thing I will say, for 8.5 years doing the military stuff here at Barstool, I've wanted to go for a ride in the Thunderbirds or Blue Angels. Please make that happen for me. I would love to go for a ride in the Thunderbirds. I will be indebted to you forever. I will even say nice things about the Air Force if we can make that happen. But Chad, thanks so much.
Let me work on that. I mean,
I love it.
I can get to the right people. So let me make that pitch.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Right, Chad.
Hey guys, I had a blast coming on this show. I'm so glad you guys are doing it and appreciate the interest. love that we had a lot to talk about, and happy to do a round anytime.
Awesome. All right, thanks to Chad for joining us. So Ryan, any caveats before we head out for the day?
No caveats for me. I just wanted to know, again, you had a 50-50 in your competition up in Chicago at the Barstool offices. And, you said it's been a while since you've competed in competition, but you do know that we have a competition coming up here soon. So with the Manumwad. And so you're kind of blaming lack of preparation for your mile run. So I just want to, give
I'll
you a
make sure
gentle
I'm
nudge.
prepared. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll make sure I'm prepared.
That's all. That's all.
Yeah. All right. Only thing that I had, was just kind of curious because I saw a buddy of mine posting about all the books he read last month, and then you dig a little deeper and you realized he listened to these books. So I'm just kind of curious, Ryan, where do you fall on the argument of reading versus listening when I ask you if you've read a book? If you've just listened to it versus read it.
I don't listen to a lot of books. I really don't listen to any books. I am a old school. I don't even like the Kindles. I have to have the physical book in my hand. So
I'm the same way. I'm the same way because I like to put it on a shelf afterwards.
Yeah.
Almost as like a sense of accomplishment. But I guess in general, if you ask someone like, "Oh, have you read my book?" and someone listened to your book, should they say like, "Oh no, I listened to it," or are you comfortable with somebody saying, "Oh yeah, I read your book," or you don't care because it's just another sale for your book?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, well, the audio version is cheaper than the book version, so I'd prefer that you actually buy the physical copy. But I think as an author, I don't care as long as you've digested the story, So yeah.
All right. I don't like when people say I read something if you listen to it. I want you to tell me you listened to it.
Yeah.
Because I agree. It doesn't matter so long as you consume the information. But I think it's a little misleading to say you read a book if you actually just listen to it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm old school like that. All right. That's going to do it for us today. So take care. Make it a great week.